entrepreneurs who tell me that they are too busy. Like, no wonder you feel overwhelmed. First thing that I ask is, can you share your calendar with me? And oftentimes I see one of two things. A calendar is that, and I think it's really, really important for visionary entrepreneurs to understand that while they can thrive in chaos, their teams really do not thrive in that space.
Meet Noor Barrage, founder of NVB Collective and a sought-after fractional COO. She's the behind-the-scenes force, scaling 6- and 7-figure companies with systems that actually work.
For the business to move forward, often what is required is a behavior change. Usually my process here is everyone on the team should be responsible for at least one metric. There is a lack of clarity or a lack of understanding as to why this is important.
Most founders, spend their first months in business scrambling. If you had to walk into their business and fix just 3 things with a system, what are they and why?
That's a really good question. And I will caveat that by saying that if not even just the first few months of businesses, I get asked to come in and support founders who've been in business for years, and you typically see the same things. So, to answer your question, 3 things that I would fix or build systems around. The first, and this is going to sound really, really obvious, but again, most of these businesses don't have these things in place. And one of the things that I really advocate for is keeping things simple. So usually when people think about systems, they shy away from that because there's all this complexity associated with systems, AI, tech. Like, what tech stack do I need? And really, if we just think about things really, really simply and we just look at the basics, it's often a lot simpler than having fancy tech stacks and AI and all of these things. So, 3 kind of key systems that I think is necessary to have in place for small to medium-sized businesses is number 1, a clear project management and task management system. Now, this sounds really, really obvious, I guess, to some people, but you'll be surprised how many businesses actually lack this. So there are an infinite amount of softwares out there that support in this. I'm a huge advocate of Trello and ClickUp. Those are my 2 favorite. Notion, Monday.com, Asana, the list is endless, but having a clear way to keep track of all ongoing projects and all the little moving nitty-gritty parts that fit under these larger projects is really, really key. And then having really, really clear deadlines that are visible to everyone at the company. It helps with accountability. And more importantly, the deadline is there. Everyone can see it. Everyone knows that we're aiming for that. And then they can backtrack and just make sure that, XYZ can happen before we get to that deadline. So that's the first one. The second,
Before we move on actually to the second one, why do you think, because I've seen this all the time as well, and also have been guilty at times of attempting to establish a new project management, for lack of a better way to put it, system, and sometimes it's hard to get them to stick in an organization. Why do you think that is?
that's a really, really good question. Systems are great, but they're only as good as the utilization. So they're only good if people actually adhere to them. I would
Yeah.
say, I think that oftentimes there is a lack of clarity or a lack of understanding as to why this is important. If people in an organization that are not used to having structure, very clear accountability, I need you to update me as you're doing this so that I know that this project is moving forward or that there's an issue, that someone is stuck. If that's not in place already, it can often feel like admin or
Mm.
and kind of, yeah, just an unnecessary additional friction point of, oh, now I have to update this thing and let everyone know what's going on. And there can also be an issue with adherence due to the lack of adherence starting at top level. So what I mean by that is, if you are leading an organization, if you are at kind of executive level, if you're a founder and you're asking people within your organization to please update the entire team with what's going on, please use this project management system, that you yourself are not even that, and people are
Yeah.
putting things in there for you, and you're like, I'm the founder. I don't really need to, update this. You can't expect the rest of your team to do so.
Right. Now, I've seen that a lots of times and completely can relate and understand. And it is so interesting too. I think that a lot of people with what you're alluding to before, they're just if they have a certain way that they've done it, just trying to get them to change to another way, especially because in our own little worlds, somebody might be like, what I'm using over here in my simple Google sheet works just fine. But then when you scale that to a team and this person over here uses something else, this person over here uses something else, it's like you have to get everybody to change their ways and unite around some sort of a common element. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I always say that habits are much harder to change than actually building the infrastructure, the tech, whatever it is. Habits are harder to change. So then the change management aspect of it, and there has to be, I think what you mentioned, founders, executive, to assume that, well, it's your job, you got to change it. That's not how it works. There has to be a real incentives to get people to actually move from the old to the new. And I've seen this a lot in big corporations, Disney to be example, where millions spent on a new system and just fell flat on its face because nobody wanted to adopt it. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more, be sure to click on the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell. It lets YouTube know you want to support the This Is the Way podcast, and it helps spread the word, and we greatly appreciate it. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I've seen this across the board. And I think one of the things that I do when I go into an organization is have really upfront and honest conversations with the team as to what this is designed to do. Usually, at the point that I get called in, there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of people just feel a little bit fed up with how things are kind of going. Deadlines are missed. The founder's frustrated. The team doesn't have clarity. Deadlines keep getting moved. So there's a collective desire to move towards better, but that like missing piece of how do we actually get there? That's kind of where I come in and I show people that there is a way. It's not difficult, but there's a steep learning curve at times if people have never used something like this, but ultimately it will lead to more capableness within the team and just less stress across the board, which I think people, when people hear that, they're like, okay, like I'm on board. But I think just having that transparent conversation of this is what this is designed to do. It's not admin for the sake of admin. No one's trying to micromanage you. We're just trying to be really transparent, have everything on one system that we can all see. We can contribute. You know what you need from X person ahead of time so that everyone can plan their days. And usually people get on board if they can see that.
yep. No, that I love it. And I've witnessed as I've looked at a few different businesses to acquire exactly how some of that looks in their systems and their attempt. I mean, because like it or not, people have a system, but the system sometimes can be one like and what I mean by that is one I saw was a folder
Skinny.
system. Yeah, sticky note, but
Right.
that's not a scalable system.
Well,
And I think that's exactly what happens. Look, at a certain level, that's perfectly fine. In fact, for some people, maybe I couldn't necessarily do it this way, but some people, sticky notes on a computer screen or whatever is perfectly fine for certain things that need to do. But the minute you need to scale that out, yeah, that becomes super challenging. So,
yeah.
what about what's the second item?
I would say the second item is probably my favorite thing. And I think people laugh when I bring it up because it's such a basic, I wouldn't even call it a system, just such a basic tool that we all have access to for free. And it's a calendar. I think, especially at exec level, I know I have conversations daily with people, business owners, founders, entrepreneurs who tell me that they are too busy, that they are overwhelmed, that they don't have enough time. And the first thing that I ask is, "Can you share your calendar with me? Can I see where your time's going?" And oftentimes, I see one of 2 things. A calendar that doesn't exist, except for, Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, kind of sporadically put across the calendar, and that also tells me a lot. It's, okay, there's no process. There's no process for these meetings. They are whenever whoever wants to talk to you wants to
Yeah.
talk to you. They're just plotted randomly. And that's a huge red flag for me because if you are letting other people dictate your time, people think, "Oh, I have a calendar link so people can book in with me." I'm like, "Great, but you have a call at 9, then you have a 2-hour gap, then you have a call after that, then you have nothing, and then you have another call, and then Tuesday you have a lot of calls, and Wednesday you have one in the middle of the day." I'm like, where's your strategic thinking time? Like, no wonder you feel overwhelmed. So a calendar is so instrumental. If we don't take control of our time, someone else will do it for us. So if it's not a ton of Zoom meetings here and there, maybe it's gym session, meeting here, and then that's kind of it. Like there isn't really anything in there. So the question I ask is if you're not managing your time, where is your time going? Like, is that here? Right. If I were to sit down and ask you, you know, where it's Wednesday today, what did you do Monday, Tuesday? Well, I woke up, I looked at Slack, opened my emails and I did this, then someone phoned me, then I had a meeting, and I'm like, Okay.
Right.
So
Then it's back to emails and it's back to Slack. Yeah.
right. So you're just sitting in reactivity, and before you know it, it's 4 p.m. and you're like, oh, okay. Well, I really needed to think about the next quarter and this new marketing campaign, but I don't have the bandwidth and I'm tired.
Yeah.
And now someone else is asking for my attention, and I've got a WhatsApp message I need to reply to. So, calendar for me is the most important thing. And the way that I kind of coach my clients through this is using their calendar as a tool that's there to ensure that their time is going where they need it and they want it to go. So, from your scheduling your runs to scheduling time with your partner to scheduling, time with friends, downtime, thinking time, on doing like, intentional action time. Everything should go in there. And often the people that I have that do that and they take those steps find an immediate alleviation of like a just relief in okay, now I have time to think strategically because I blocked out a 2-hour session and sit down and look at the business as a whole and look at data and start to really think about direction and focus on impactful revenue generating activity rather than sitting in that reactive space.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I think those are each such critical things and their time management critical as well. I do think that a lot of people struggle though, because, and even as a leader talking to people sometimes in that scenario, they feel like you're micromanaging when you get into that. When the goal isn't micromanagement, the goal is just, look, you're struggling, right? We want to fix this. But a lot of people are instead like, well, no, I mean, this is my calendar. I know how to manage my time. But unfortunately, again, so many people don't because they're not planning for exactly what you said around that sort of deep thinking block of actually getting the work done that's really going to move the needle in their reactionary mode all of the time. I'm curious, how do you, if you walk into an organization, or unless you haven't faced in particular what I said, but I've faced it a lot. That's why I'm curious is how do you approach these team members who otherwise now feel like here's, this person who's brought in to try to help and basically micromanage me, even though again, it's not that, but that's how it might feel.
Yeah. Usually, when I come into an organization, the first thing that I do is I speak to the team and I have a really open conversation about my values and my philosophy and kind of what I do and my approach. I detest micromanaging. I think it is something that people default to because of lack of systems and lack of infrastructure, but also a lack of trust in that the right things are going to be done on time. And that is because of lack of systems. So I go in and I tell them, this is kind of what I do. This is what I believe in. I'm not here to micromanage. I'm here to make your life easier. And I usually start with the team members that have expressed overwhelm and issues with time. They're the easiest ones to kind of go in, look at calendars. I usually ask these people to do a time audit. So essentially, they look at their calendar for the last 2 weeks and they will plot every activity that happened from, again, it depends on who these people are. If they are full-time employees, then I can ask them between the hours of 9 to 5 or whenever their contracted hours are, like, tell me everything that you've done. Usually what I find is they're spending far too long on things that should be taking 10 or 15 minutes. Usually it's because of lack of clarity or lack of process. They're spending far too long in meetings, which I don't know why people love meetings. Like, it's something that I am not a huge advocate for. I think meetings have their place, but most things do not require an hour meeting on a
Yeah.
calendar. So I then take that back to the founder and I say, okay, look, the issues in this team or in this department are that people are spending way too long on meetings. Like,
Mhm.
we looked at over the last 2 weeks, we had approximately X amount of hours spent in meetings. It's just not efficient. We don't need to do that. Let's cut that down, and then looking at specific activities that are taking longer than they should. And usually I pinpoint that lack of process. So
Yeah.
people need more structure, people need more guidance, people need a how to, because otherwise they're left kind of scrambling. There's no consistency in how we execute because this isn't documented anywhere. It's just like, just do it how you think you need to do it. And then it's not done at the right standard, but there isn't a right standard. So people are generally pretty receptive to these time audits if framed in the right way. And that framing is, this is to support you to make your life easier. And for me to do my job, which is pinpoint the gaps in systems and process.
Got it. That makes sense. And that meeting thing, because we can relate to all too much. Yeah, I think in organizations, a big piece of that is it gives people a false sense of action in progress. So even though they're not actually moving forward necessarily, they're still there. And then they get some of that, not to pick on extroverts over introverts, but extroverts be like, hey, there's energy from that. That also helps, feel good in that sort of way. And regardless, introvert or extrovert, I think each person can walk out of there. Okay, I finally got like sometimes that's how you have to get a question answered because of in many ways the first set of systems you said that don't exist, that people couldn't get the actual information they had. So I can see how these two combined, obviously make a huge difference. What would
Yeah.
number three look like?
So number three, okay. So usually I would say a prioritization system and I think this is particularly applicable to startups, small sized businesses, because things move so quickly. So there's always new things, or this isn't how it should be, but this is, what is happening in practice. There's always new things that founders are wanting to do. This new thing came out, this new software came out. We need to jump on this. We need to do this. We need to launch this new campaign tomorrow. Like, there's always new things that are happening. And for me, having a prioritization system is super, super important because it ensures that we are focusing on the right activities and that we're always doing things that are in alignment with wider goals. Founders love, entrepreneurs, founders love the word urgency. Everything is urgent, everything needs to happen tomorrow. And that just is not how, things really need to be. Teams do not thrive with urgent. They do not thrive in chaos. Visionary entrepreneurs do. And I think it's really, really important for visionary entrepreneurs to understand that while they can thrive in chaos and for this massive dopamine hit that they live for, their teams really, really, really do not thrive in that space. If anything, it negatively impacts teams because it kills momentum. You're in the middle of a project, you're like, yes, we're doing XYZ, we're getting closer to that deadline. And then suddenly the founder goes to an event and is told that the new thing in the space is that they have to a specific campaign, and the entire team has to pivot, and it just completely destroys momentum within the business. So I would say having a clear prioritization system and understanding what is truly important, what is it that's going to move the needle forward, and having 1 to 3 items that you focus on. Everything else is noise and can wait. And that's often the most challenging work that I need to do with entrepreneurs, because their innate feeling is everything is urgent and like we need to move
Mhm.
fast and we need to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
And that's not how organizations work.
Eh, eh,
How do you, I've fallen into this trap,
Yeah.
before. You wanna narrow down your list to 1 to 3, but
Yeah.
then you go into some exercise and all of a sudden you're like, "No, I have 15."
Yeah.
That's some of the
Uh,
girl offsites we used to do. Yeah.
so, how would you approach a founder like, Michael and I, who tend to really when we sit down, we're like, well, I think this 15 are urgent." What's the process to say, "No, pick 3," and how would somebody choose the 3?
Yeah. It's a really, really good question. So, one of the things that is really important when dealing with visionary entrepreneurs is having a really solid planning system or planning infrastructure. So, I do this yearly. So, every year I sit down with the year that I work with and we talk about coming year. What financial number are we working towards? What's the target? What critical number, what big number outside of a financial number are we working towards? Is it we want X number of members in a membership? Is it we want X number of one clients? Like, what is that metric that we want all activities to be geared towards? And those are the two driving numbers. And then we kind of break things down quarter by quarter. Okay, so if we have a revenue target of whatever, 5 million, and this year we did 3.5, what are we going to do to bridge that gap?
Mm.
What do we need to do on the marketing front? What do our sales need to look like? Do we need to increase price point? What does fulfillment need to look like? Do we need to expand the team? And we start breaking that down quarter by quarter and then month by month. Now, the reason this is so important is because when you're out doing a run on the treadmill or whatever, and you have these more random ideas and you're like, like it doesn't matter if we had planned to do XYZ, now we want to do ABC. You have the plan. Now you just have to stick to it. And I would say 98% of the time, those ideas seem really great in the moment. If you sleep on it and you wait a week, it's not an idea that you're going to want to pick up. So again, the founders that push back on me, all I ask is, "Let's wait a week. Let's wait a week. The team is doing XYZ right now. We need to focus on this, close this loop. Let's reevaluate this in a week. If you still think it's a good idea and that this is going to bring us closer to remind them of the targets, we can discuss and we can see what we can do to pivot." And more often than not, the response I get is, "I'm really glad you didn't wait because not such a great idea and the team smashed it. And I'm so glad that they stayed on track. And like now we're just going to crack on with the plan for week 2."
Nice. I have a similar 24-hour rule for my kids when they get to purchase stuff. I'm like, just give it 24 hours, see if you
Yeah.
still want it tomorrow, because I know where it's going to end up. Yeah. But no, I think that's a good approach to take because it is true. Oftentimes it's that new shiny thing that people are excited about. But when you start teeing it up and you're looking at things through the lens of, the core priorities and the time, you start to see things a little bit better and that helps you to put them into the right category. So that makes sense. You hesitated for this third one and you thought, should this go? So now it sounds like there's this fourth we should ask about as well.
Um, the fourth comes down to I haven't really like dubbed it a name or a
Yeah.
system, but I think let's call it like your personal operating system for like lack of a better name. And I think for me, one of the things that I have realized by through working with all these founders, entrepreneurs, in order for the business to move forwards and to succeed, often what is required is a behavior change from the visionary founder. And the personal operating system essentially supports in maintaining that behavior change. So usually when I have conversations with founders, they acknowledge that a change needs to happen, but
Yeah.
part of the journey is falling back into what feels normal for
Yeah.
the entrepreneur. So that system consists of the right support around you. So myself, other perhaps execs on the team who are aware of this and can call it out when they see, the visionary entrepreneur slipping into old habits. It's giving the entrepreneur tools as well. So, like reflecting, brain dumping. I have all these ideas. I want to do all of these things. It's like, great, let's write it down. Let's address it in a planning meeting. And it's like, okay, like now it's on paper. I feel less like hyped about it. It's on paper now. So it's all these little tools, that support in making sure that the business can continue to move forward, that can only happen if we can see behavior change long term.
N Makes sense and interesting. A lot of the things that you said within the 3 seem like they fit into this, yeah, personal operating system to this degree, so I can see how, yeah, that's like the over-encompassing how they do those
Yeah.
things together.
Yeah.
Speaking of personal operating system, but I think it radiates out to other parts of the organization too. Michael and I kind of grew up in the Walt Disney Company culture, and
Mhm.
within our organization, metrics was a big thing. And Michael and I actually kind of led the way of implementing ISO 9001 business processes within the organization that heavily relies on metrics. I'm just curious to understand your kind of philosophy and view of metrics, and how do you get that founder, that executive that thinks metrics might be just busy work or not important to say, actually no, it is important, and it's not about pointing fingers or pointing blame.
Yeah.
Actually, metrics are there to provide insights so you can focus on the right things.
Yeah. So in the line of work that I do, I usually see one of two things. Either the founder is obsessed with too many metrics and they'll have like bizarre things that are really like, things that like it's not related to revenue, there's nothing to do with marketing, it's nothing to do with churn, like kind of like your standard metrics. They'll have like really bizarre things in there that they're tracking,
Mm.
but they're tracking that for no purpose. It's just like, "Oh, we have this." And I'm like, "Okay, great." So, like, if this is first of all, like, what is good and what is bad, they don't know. And also, if it's bad, what behavior change like, what needs to happen then? And they can't tell me. So we have that camp, and then we have the camp of nothing. Like, you know, what are profit margins? I don't know. How much revenue did you bring in last month? I don't know. Like, we're good because we're still here. And I'm like,
Right.
how is this a thing?
Yeah.
Um, Metrics are absolutely vital to any organization. My philosophy around that is we want to keep it simple, especially with the type of businesses that I work with, small startups. We want to keep things as simple as we can. So usually I want to say like no more than 8 to 10 numbers we're tracking. Again, it depends on the team size as well. If it's a bigger team, then perhaps we'll look at more. Usually my process here is everyone on the team should be responsible for at least one metric. So, if you have a sales manager, they're going to be responsible for maybe close rate or cash collected. If you have someone who's head of client success, they're going to be responsible for churn, X number in client satisfaction, or whatever it is. And that means that we can assess people, hold people accountable, but more importantly, give people a clear way to see how they're doing. So if I'm sales manager and my big metric, and I may have more than one, but let's say my big metric is a certain number in cash collected, and that's what the business needs to hit. And I may have a must do target, and I may have a reach target. And if I have a reach
Mm.
target and maybe, I get a bonus or whatever it is.
Right.
Let's say I have this like I must hit this. If I don't hit this, then I know that I'm not doing my job as best as I can. And we assess that on a monthly basis. So if I don't hit that 1 month, I mean, ideally in an organization, if you're on track to not hit that, you need to be having a conversation and seeing what can be done to make sure that we can hit that. But let's say I get to end of month, I don't hit that. And during my one to one with whoever manages me, we talk about that. Like, I really felt like I didn't have XYZ support. And, week two, I did reach out and I asked for this. And then management knows, okay, so we'll need to put more infrastructure in place. We need more support. We need to get this. We need to get that. So it really allows the organization to ensure that everyone on the team is clear as to what their contribution is. And more importantly, how their contribution fits into and impacts the business as a whole. And that is
Right.
really, really, really powerful because rather than showing up and being like, did my 9 to 5, I'm good, I'm out. It's like, okay, no, 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 like, fine. And I also don't care if people do a 9 to 5. I'm like, if you work 3 hours and you hit your targets, fantastic, better for everyone. But it really incentivizes a performance based organization where people feel really aligned
Yeah.
and feel like they're contributing. I think people feel good when they feel like they're contributing. People, for the most part, want to do a good job in their roles. And I think that businesses owe it to their teams and to the people that they employ and that like whoever they have contracts to ensure that they have the right infrastructure to allow for that.
Right. I think what you said too, I think it's another area where initially, as Art mentioned, some of our experience with it is people can respond at first like, again, once more, like a micromanagement. You're measuring me now? You're trying to get rid of me, aren't you? It's like, no, no, no. Again, it's like if you top performers in general, no matter what, if we want to look at it across, athletes, if we want to look at it, across, people in, medical fields, if we want to look at it across, no matter what, they're ultimately looking at key things they're trying to achieve and they know what those are. And it's such a critical aspect of it. And you don't become, great by not understanding how you are constantly improving against these other things. And for me, this is a big one in just even the workplace. Like anybody who doesn't have those themselves, I'm a big believer in don't wait also for like management to introduce them. Bring them in, figure out how to do it yourself. Because the minute you do in an organization that doesn't, all of a sudden people are like, whoa, it's like you stand out because it's such a critical thing that's going to help you. And then it wears off on the team as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
for these, what particular like softwares or tools do you recommend across each of these elements? Obviously, the calendar, that one makes no sense. But when you speak about the other ones like the project management or even maybe around the metrics or KPI side.
I think it really depends on the what industry the business is in because I know if I've worked with a lot of sales agencies, I think Sales Hub, HubSpot on Salesforce, I think are the two that people generally really, really like. Go High Level, I've had a lot of, I have experience with Go High Level. I think it's not as intuitive as some of the other one. And I think from a data standpoint, it's lacking as well. I know that you have to integrate various different pieces with Go High Level to get the level of data that most organizations are after.
Mhm.
On the client delivery, platforms like Circle are really, really great because they provide you with data on engagement, how engaged people are who are inside of the actual platform. And then off the back end of that data, you can then run automation. So let's say if someone hasn't engaged in, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks, you can then have
Right.
automatic things going on for people to kind of want to engage, which is really, really good. But I would say, automation is really powerful here, especially on, I would say, sales front and the client success delivery front as well. Because when you look at, upwards of like 30 clients, it becomes very difficult to do these things manually and to keep track of all these moving parts manually. So
Yeah.
uh, any of this to follow up with leads to ensure that
Mhm.
customers are happy, to send out a survey to gather feedback, then that is obviously the preference, especially as you take on more and more customers.
Sure. That makes sense. Based on some of the things you just described, I'm curious too. Do you find like if we think about your, ideal customer for lack of a better way to put it, do you attract more online businesses or work with more online businesses? And is there a specific like size that the person is like from an annual revenue standpoint when they usually start reaching out?
Yeah, so I have worked almost exclusively with business owners who operate online. Yes, I want to say like almost, I would say like 98, 99% of
Yeah.
clients that I've worked with operate strictly online. I moved into the space right when COVID. I think I got started in B2B in March. No, in February of 2020. In March of 2020, everything shut down in the UK.
Mhm.
So I think I was in a very interesting position where there were small people who, back of COVID, were made
Yeah.
redundant and were looking to explore work in the online space. So I think I kind of moved into the online business space at a very very a good time. I was very, very lucky. So majority of clients that I work with are online pretty exclusively. In terms of size, I have worked with eight-figure entrepreneurs. I would say that my area of expertise is more early stages, businesses doing anywhere between 40, 50 grand a month up to 250 grand a month. I would say that's like really my bread and butter because at that point, people are looking to grow teams. That's something I have a lot of experience in advising on how to hire, how to fire, how to have the difficult conversations with team members, how to start moving into being a leader rather than just being a business owner or being an entrepreneur or
Right.
solopreneur. And that's really the kind of aspect of operations that I really enjoy.
Oh, awesome. Okay, yeah, and it's interesting again, everything that you say there, and a lot of people may not think about it this way, but like each of those little components is his own microsystem, or and that's what's amazing, like about them. Again, I geek out on this stuff, so but it's always so interesting to see that because yeah, the hiring, all those things. I mean, I know there was a few different things when Art and I were in corporate America. We're like, let's build a tool or something around this to be able to do it better. But I'm curious, do you see a big difference between those blocks that you said, the ones that are, around the 40, 50 versus those that are generating a lot more revenue each month? Or is it a very similar disconnect sometimes? It's just the stage at which they come to you for help.
Yeah. That's really interesting. My knee-jerk reaction is to say that there isn't that much of a difference. I'd say as more revenue comes into the business, you move more towards people issues. And things like culture start being something that founders have to think about. It's like, I don't understand why everything is so chaotic and why, this person, missed this. And I'm like, they're mimicking you, like
I know, right? It's always
people look up and they see that their boss, that the CEO of the company is late to meetings, like shows up like just out of I had this with one client of mine who was like, I don't like it that the team shows up late to these calls and they're wearing gym wear. And I'm like, okay, did you have a conversation with them about
right.
what is expected? No. I'm like, okay, so if you show up late and you show up on a treadmill walking as you do a meeting, aren't you
Just set the culture.
well, you're
Yeah.
right, like, aren't you indirectly telling them that that's cool in this organization? And they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that." So, I think as organizations grow, as revenue grows, and there starts being more people in the organization, we start moving more towards conversations around how to manage people, how to lead people, how to hire, how to fire, how to have conversations about direction and vision and how to get people aligned with where the company's going and how to retain talent and all of these things versus I'd say, around the 50 to 150 grand mark, we're still I mean, at least in my experience, still dealing with, like, very basic operational issues of, like, we don't have a project management system, like, we don't use a calendar, like, everything's really chaotic, and start, building those foundations, and then eventually they kind of get to more of the people-centric issues.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Really interesting. And when you work with clients, do you find that they typically work with you? You help with their organization implementing these things, and then it's like, okay, see you later? Or is it often more of one of those of where you continue to kind of work with them? Because, look, I mean, let's face it, there's always new systems, there's always refinement, there's always falling back into the, trail we've created into the ground that we got to crawl out of. What does that look like?
Yeah. So that's in total honesty, that's something that I'm still learning and exploring. Because I've been in the space now for 6 years. Of those 6 years, I was a partner at a company that I helped grow for 4.5 years and have only been running my own business since end of October last year.
Yeah.
But what I will say is the clients that I supported in the business that I was a partner in, I'm now having conversations with about people issues because now they're, making
Oh, interesting.
a month. So I think the cool thing about having my skill set, I guess,
Yeah.
is that there are less of us than there are visionary entrepreneurs. And the operators that do exist, for the most part, would not class themselves as entrepreneurs. They would class themselves as an ops director, an ops manager, a second in command, whatever it is. And I think the thing that I found in the last 6 to 7 months, which I it hadn't planned and I didn't expect, and I think is really cool, is that because of how I've started my own business, I've had clients who I've worked with in the past who've now come back to me and see me as an equal and someone who just has a skill set that they don't have that they can now lean on it. Go, hey, I need your advice here. Like, do I work with you? Do I do something else? Like, what do I do? Is this just a quick conversation? Is it a 1 hour session or is this a longer thing that I need to work on? And I think that's really, really cool because, like you said, this is a long thing. It's not okay, I fixed this now. It's like, great, now we fix this, but now we have this problem. It's like, I need to hire someone. It's like, great, I hired someone, but now I need to make sure that I'm setting them up to win. And now I need to have conversations with that about performance. And now they missed this metric month two. So what do I do? And how do
Right.
I have that conversation? So there is so much to it, and this is why I love doing fractional work because I'm at the forefront of it still. So I'm in there, I'm having these conversations, I'm adapting these systems and these processes and these ways of navigating these issues, and then, handing that over to clients, one-off
Right.
consult sessions and providing them with the solution.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Noor, speaking of your skill sets, you definitely talk and come across as a seasoned operation executive, as like a COO. What was your journey like? Like how did you develop these skills?
Oh my goodness. So, in the interest of time, I I will do a very condensed journey and just highlight, I think, the key pieces. I was always introverted. As a child, I always had my nose in a book. Was not, I was not super extroverted, super social. I liked being alone. I've always been I have clinical OCD. So I have always been very hyper regimented and hyper organized. I think my characteristics naturally make me a good operator. Um, I never thought of myself. I had very similar like entrepreneur journey. I think as most education system failed me. I did not have a good time at school. I thought I was very average. I never thought of myself as intelligent until I got to university because, in my time, that was like the thing. It was like you finish school, you go to university. I have ethnic parents, so it was very much the thing. Like there was no, you don't go to uni. It was like you go to uni. And funnily enough, my first time I went in as a business major, and I was a declared business major, and I hated it, and I had no idea what was going on. I did accounting, finance, microeconomics, mathematics, and English in my first term, and I was like, "This is just going over my head. I'm not a business person at all." And I ended up switching to literature and philosophy. Um, Again, I love books, I love reading, and after that, I moved back to London, I did this abroad, and I did my master's in human rights and international criminal law because the plan was to be a lawyer. Again, I have ethnic parents. So the plan was to be a lawyer. And after my degree was very rigorous, I went to a pretty good university in London and it was really, really tough. And after university, I decided to defer my scholarship and my acceptance at law school because I was like, if I get into law, that's it. There's no break. It's just going to be hustle for the rest of my life. So I need a year. And my parents were like, we don't do gap years in our cultures, but we'll give you this one. And I basically went and started my own fitness business because I was very into health and fitness. My sister had had a recent health chronic diagnosis. And I was like very passionate about helping people feel strong. And that led me into the business world. And I pretty much fell in love with the business side, not the health side, but the business side of running a business and having these conversations with people and thinking about how things could run smoother. And so I ended up becoming a partner at a company. I started in sales and worked my way up into director of operations, COO eventually, and then a partner. And it was through that I realized that there was so much wrong with the online space, and the online business space was advocating for things that I vehemently disagreed with hustle and, burnout. Burnout essentially was depicted as the marker of success. It's like you are successful when you can say that you burn out because you've worked so hard. And I went through that. I went through multiple cycles of burnout. And I knew that there had to be a different way. I was like, this isn't people get into business for freedom for the most part. I'm like, and this isn't freedom. I don't understand it. Like there was something that was contrarian for me.
Yeah.
So I kind of went off on my journey, and I met a really interesting entrepreneur who changed the way that I saw things. His name's Alex Sharfen, and he had a podcast called the Momentum Podcast. He's incredible. And he was kind of my little like beacon of light in the darkness. And I thought that's so there's so much work to do in this space, especially with young people who, I mean, the world is changing so quickly. And I think more and more people are going to need to explore business as an option, but
Right.
not in this container of like, the only thing that you're allowed to talk about outside of business is fitness, because that's linked better performance in business. And you have to burn out and you have to hustle, and there's nothing that exists. You can't have a proper family, you can't have time with loved ones. Like it's just hustle and business. I don't want to talk about anything else. And I thought, this is wrong, and I want to change the way that people see that, and I also wanna help business owners shift their perspectives and show them that there's a better way, and that led me to leaving the company in October, and I started my own business, and now I'm on a mission to change the way that people see business as a whole and just show people that it's not that hard. I don't want to say that and for it to sound like oversimplistic or condescending, but I think people really over complicate business. And we just need to go back to the basics, and we need to become protective over our time and really remember why we got into business. Because for the most part, it's freedom, financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom. If your kid has a football game, go to the freaking game. Like, he might not have another game. He might quit tomorrow and then miss the football game. Like, that's more valuable than spending time checking off a meaningless to-do list, and it's not going to get you anywhere. So that's essentially my journey, I guess, into the space. Is not very conventional, but I wouldn't do, you couldn't pay me to do anything else.
Yeah, it's great. It's interesting. There's a piece there you said that I'm curious on that jump when you got into your own business the first time. Like the background before that, you said okay, you were going to business school and it was literature. It's like, but what made you actually decide that you were an entrepreneur back at that point, or you were going to give it a go? Because a lot of other people would just be like, they seek the false safety that they believe can come out of sometimes the again 9 to 5 air quotes, but what actually made you, I mean, it sounded like there was a story there with the health thing, but what still gave you that courage? Had you read enough books that said, "I could do this," watched enough like, what was it that made you decide to make that leap and think that, "I'm gonna be an entrepreneur"?
So, again, I'll be honest, and this is probably the like not as glamorous answer I can share. I don't think that I saw myself as an entrepreneur until very, very, very recently, as in like a few months ago. And I
Wow.
still struggle with that label because of that container I was taught about. So for me, entrepreneurship, the way that I have seen it is you have to be obsessed with business. And I love business, but I also love other things. You know, I am obsessed with musical theater. I have singing lessons. I run. I love hiking. I'm more than just the business aspect. And for me, it felt like a box that never really fit me. So I think I've always struggled with that label. I've never, even now when people ask me what I do, I'm like, I run business. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, like some people would call it entrepreneurship, but other people will say, you know,
Yeah.
what it's still, I'm trying to redefine it so that it's something that fits me and you know, and feels right. That shift that you were talking about earlier, I didn't have anything to lose at that point. I thought, I'm gonna try this.
Right.
You know, in my head, it was like, this is just something I'm passionate about right now. And once I get my foot into that corporate door, I don't see myself getting out. And, you know, you guys know this because you come from corporate, but it's very attractive in a lot of ways. You know, there's a very clear career progression for you as a lawyer, even clearer because you go in, you're a trainee in the States, you're an associate, then you move to senior associate, then you make partner,
Hmm.
you know, you have equity. Like there's a very, very clear ladder for you. It's very, very safe. The world is always going to need lawyers, even in, you know,
Yeah.
the age of AI. There's always going to be a need for lawyers. It was financially very, very attractive. It was a respected profession. For me, the appeal of law was the problem-solving aspect, which I do in business. And that was the thing that I was like, I can get, you know, on board with this, like solving problems for clients. It's like a game, it's like a puzzle, it's like business. But I didn't have anything to lose. I was like, I'm gonna do this for a year, and if nothing comes from it, you know, I deferred my place, and then I deferred it again, and then they were like, "We can't defer it again," and I was like, I'm gonna just apply. And they were like, "Okay, but, you know, you'll have to apply again." I'm like, "I don't think I will." But, you know,
Right.
so I didn't really have anything to lose, and I think that's the beauty about being young. You know, I finished my bachelor's degree at 20. I finished very young. I finished my master's degree at, I turned 20 a few days after. I finished very, very young, and I had time on my side.
Yeah.
I think it's easier when you're very, very young to experiment and to figure out what it is you want. And I think now it's in a way more difficult because so many people are choosing not to go to university. And there's this
Mhm.
uncertainty of what do I do? How do I do it? Like, where's the support? Where's the roadmap? Where's the progression? Um, but I think you owe it to yourself to, you know, just explore.
Well, and I think that's actually in some ways what school for a lot of people has got in the way of though, because even though it's true, some people can go in to university and it's like, okay, you have your certain prerequisite, all these things you have to get done. But often what still happens in there, somebody is still going towards this track that they felt they locked into. And a lot of people then just complete that. And then afterwards is when they realize, okay, I've got the degree, but this isn't what I want to do. So I think that exploration is critical, now more than ever. But realistically, it's always been critical. It's just society hasn't been pushing people to you've got to look at it in this different way that I think you really have to today. But you made a second pivot then later on when you obviously did decide to leave your I call it career job, however you want to say at the time as a partner and jump. What gave you the confidence at that time to be able to do so? And what step did you take to, be able to create that runway for yourself?
That decision for me was a culmination of few things that had happened over that course of the year, but
Mhm,
also a few months leading up to that decision. This is going to sound so cliche, but in August, I took time off, which
mhm.
never did. And I went, and it is like really taking time off. Like I went hiking and I had no reception for 10 days. So like I couldn't be
Yeah,
online even if I wanted
yeah,
to. And it was, yeah, I was like 9 days in the Dolomites. I was like, I have no way to contact you. Like if something happens in the business, like deal with it because
yeah.
I incommunicado.
See ya.
Yeah. And I had the most amazing time, and I, really felt like I recharged. I was out in nature,
Yeah,
and then I came back and I felt exhausted. Like, you know, opened the, laptop, started the day. and I felt exhausted and not excited. And that for me, I was like, this feels like burnout because I'd
Mhm.
experienced burnout before. And so I knew what the warning signs were. So I was like, okay, but okay, let's see what's happening here.
Yeah.
Uh, and a few things happened after that. So there was a change in leadership that I disagreed with. And I made that clear and I made my reasoning clear. And there was a change in overall direction that I opposed, and I opposed for reasons related to like my values. So I have this belief that people tell me it's crazy that if you are a service-based business, you have to be product led. And I have been told for years that that's not how it works. You have to be sales and marketing led, product follows. And I don't agree with that. I
Mhm.
think that you have to lead with building a product that is going to add value, however it adds value. The sales and marketing follow that. You can't sell something that you're not confident is going to deliver to its intended audience. Um, so there were a few things that happened that I was like, this is starting to feel not right for me. And more importantly, my opinion wasn't being valued to the degree that I thought it should be. I had been toying with for a while about starting my own thing, but I'm very introverted. I have always sat behind, and I've done amazing things, but I've always been behind the scenes. So no one's really seen them, and they haven't necessarily been attributed directly to me. I didn't have a personal brand, I didn't have a following. And that held me back for so long because I was like, "Okay, if I do this, like, how do I, like, I'm not like, I'm gonna talk to the camera and be super chat like, that's not me, and I'm not gonna pretend to do that." So there was that held me back for a while, and then it got to a point where I just thought, "I'm in this position now where I don't doubt that I have something that is valuable, in terms of my skill set and my knowledge base. And I am feeling more and more passionate about pushing for a change in this space. There's so much that I disagree with. And I have worked with people who have massive followings who say these things, but internally it's completely and utterly different. And the lack of authenticity and integrity really started to eat away at me. And I just thought, I I need to do something. I need to say something. I need to show people that there's a better way. And I
Right.
think that we're in this period of time right now where there's a lot happening in the world. The economy is a very scary thing, and in not the best state. And we have buyers are being more weary of where they put their money. Trust is at an all-time low. And I want to help the industry be more product led so that that's not the case. I really want to make sure that businesses are put in a position where they can deliver, where they can have healthy working environments for their people, where the founders can live these lives that they, of freedom and, whatever. So for me, it was a no brainer. It was like, I have to, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I am pretty stubborn, like aggressively stubborn. So when I set out to do something, I'm not saying that, like, whenever I set out to do something, it always happens, but I can always look myself in the mirror and say to myself that I did absolutely I couldn't have done anything else. And that's what I did. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to build an audience, but I'm going to do everything I can to build an audience and to do it my way, not to be a TikTok, dancing on
Yeah.
camera. Like, that's not my way. My will is I'm just gonna give value and tell people my opinions, and I'm gonna do it in a written format because that's what I feel is, most authentic. And
Right.
people took to it and people got on board, and I think people are hungry for a different way to do
Yeah.
business, to see work, to see careers. Yeah, and so for me, it was a hard decision, but it felt like a no-brainer.
Now you mentioned the TikToks that I'm just saying you did also say the music theater. So are we not going to see you doing any of that in your videos on Think
I
Build
will
More?
say I love watching and
Yeah.
at times partaking, but, yeah, I think that's just a completely different persona. my business owners, yeah, not
That's
Uh, no, speaking of products, before we started recording, you were mentioning how you're adding a new element to your business and introducing a digital product. Can you give us a little teaser on what this is and where should people look for it?
yeah, absolutely. So because
Mm.
always the plan for me. But for various reasons, I wanted to wait a little while before I put this together. I wanted to take on some fractional clients and explore testing a few different systems and refining some processes and um, get out there and really talk to people and start to build a community. And I've done that now to the point where I can no longer put it off. So for me, the digital product will allow me to help more people than what I can do on a one-to-one and a fractional basis. So I'm building something that is what I wish I had a couple of years ago. So there are so many growth accelerators, masterminds out there, but they are designed mainly for sales and marketing, and they are designed for visionary entrepreneurs. Very, very little out there that talks about how to actually run the business and how to have tough conversations with your team and how to hire and how to go about making sure that things are done on the day to day and what infrastructure is needed to support that. So I'm building a product that is going to tackle all of that and also be a place where people us to me and can ask me questions and hey, I hired this person yesterday. Now what the heck do I do? Like, and for me to kind of really serve as a mentor to business owners and eventually their operators, or both. Like, I'm happy for it to be both. But that's what I'm really hoping that this digital product will be essentially a mentorship to deal with the quote unquote unsexy but very necessary side of business.
That's great. I think just even the power of that collective that could be created around that, because it could be lonely sometimes in the as being an entrepreneur. Like I know some people think, I don't know, it doesn't appear that way, but no, there's lots of head down, focus time on your own thing. There's solving the problems and other things here. It's like a lot of entrepreneurs aren't necessarily out there, and especially more introverted ones, building up that network. So when you do have issues, it's nice to be able to have, like, I could see how this could absolutely benefit people and even deepening their network, let alone the fact that they'd have access to you and all the learnings and experience that you have, from working with all the clients. So it sounds pretty cool.
Uh, um, I know you had mentioned LinkedIn, but if people want to find you, is that the best place? LinkedIn?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is my platform. I love it, and that's the best place to find me and all the links and everything to various things that I do. My email is all on there, so that's the best place to find me, and also just to stay up to date with things that I'm talking about. I share a lot on there. I post 6 days a week now. There's a lot going out there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. But I think this has been great conversation, especially with two guys that definitely have operations in their DNA and can speak about it all day. So really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah. No, the value is there. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you both so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.